Hi, summer starters. I'm going to walk y'all through financial aid, everything that you need to do this quarter, again in the fall, and kind of throughout your time here at Baylor Law School. So here's what we're going to cover. We're going to cover scholarships and how those work. We're going to cover, as I mentioned, kind of a step-by-step of what you need to do. We're going to cover some other things you might need to consider. We're going to talk a little bit about budgeting. We're going to talk about what tasks you're going to need to do in law school. And then we're going to talk about who you should contact when you have financial aid questions or issues. So, your scholarship, as you know, you were offered your scholarship with your admission decision. That scholarship, we give it to you in a quarterly amount, and then we also tell you what we expect it will be for a year. But the quarterly amount is what you need to be concerned with because we are going to give that amount to you every quarter for up to 9 quarters, which is the length of law school. If you take a light summer, for example, next summer, and you're only taking a few hours, we can take part of your scholarship, award it in that summer, and then kind of your final quarter, your 10th quarter would be a little bit lighter. But we're going to give you 9 quarters worth of scholarship. Anytime you're awarded or you're enrolled at least half time, we're going to automatically award you that scholarship. If you're less than half time, so fewer than 10 hours, you will need to tell us that if you want to use some of your scholarship. If you're coming into law school and you have less than $24,000 a year, if you do well in the first year, so those first 3 quarters, summer, fall, winter, at the end of that time, if you have a cumulative 3.6 or higher, we're going to award you $8,000. We're going to bump up your award to $8,000, I should say. Anytime that you have a cumulative 3.6 or higher, for the remainder of law school, we will give you that $8,000 a quarter. So, kind of a step by step of what you need to do for financial aid. First step is filling out the FAFSA, file the FAFSA, complete any follow up that they send you. So, you need to have an FSA ID. You want to choose Baylor as a recipient. Baylor Law School is not a separate recipient. The FAFSA's year is fall through summer. So, for the summer, if you're planning to take out any sort of aid, you will need to file the 25-26 FAFSA. For the fall, starting in the fall, you'll do the 26-27 one, and that would be good all the way through next summer. You want to make sure that you're filing independently. All law students are independent. And you want to make sure that you don't choose the federal work study option. We will not award work study right off the bat. That can slow things down a little bit. After that, you'll want to review your award when the financial aid office starts packaging soon. They will email your Baylor email address, and you will see your award. All that's going to be listed on there is your scholarship and your federal direct unsubsidized loan if you filed the FAFSA. So if you want to figure out exactly how much aid that you're eligible for, if you look at your award in BearWeb, you will see kind of a whole list of line items. Then you'll see a budget, which is $31,679 for the summer for any full-time student. Those line items are not necessarily going to be what you're going to spend. It just is showing how they came up with a budget. That's what they think kind of the average law student taking the average number of hours might need for all of those things for the summer. That's also kind of the cap on on the amount of aid that you can get for the summer. Now, your cost of attendance is going to vary a little bit each term. It's going to be slightly more for the fall and the spring because they will include insurance. That doesn't mean you're being charged for insurance. They want to give you the opportunity to purchase insurance. And so they build that in based on the cost of Baylor insurance. Baylor student health insurance is charged twice a year in the fall and in the spring. And then it'll be about the same for the winter and the summer. It's based on the assumption that you'll take 14 hours, but you are eligible for that cost of attendance, that amount, anytime you take at least 10 hours, regardless of how much you take. So the cost of attendance, the amount of aid that you can get, is going to be the same whether or not you're taking 10 hours or 17 hours. So keep that in mind. The university is on a 2 semester, 1 summer system. The reason that I mention that is that they package a little bit differently. So they package fall through spring together, and then they package summer as a standalone. So you as a summer starter will get this summer package, and then in the fall, you'll get a package for fall through next spring. So you will see that your cost of attendance is going to look about 3 times as much as this quarter because you're getting all 3 quarters packaged together. So um, you'll see your cost of attendance, that budget, you'll see your scholarship, and then you'll see kind of net cost. Net cost is what you can cover in loans. If you take that and subtract the unsubsidized loans, what is remaining is other eligibility. Sometimes it's listed as alternative loan eligibility. All right, so now you're going to kind of figure out, your cost of attendance. How are you going to fill that cost of attendance? And once again, you don't have to take loans up to that cost of attendance or take aid up to that cost of attendance. It's just the ceiling on what you can get. Obviously, the first chunk will come from scholarship. The next chunk, as I've mentioned, will come from federal direct unsubsidized loans. So if you take out loans this summer, you're going to be eligible for the current limits on federal loans. If you don't take out any loans this summer, and we can certainly talk about this, you will be eligible for new limits, which I'm not going to list here. But currently, the limit for federal direct unsubsidized loans is $20,500 every fall through summer, with a lifetime limit $138,500. So this summer, you're going to receive as much of that as possible, because the government's year is fall through summer. So they're going to award as much of that as possible this summer. And then starting in the fall, it will reset that 20,500, but it will be spread out over fall, winter, and spring. So you can get as much of that as you can. It just can't, that plus your scholarship cannot exceed cost of attendance. Interest does accrue during school on these. Currently has a 7.94% fixed interest rate. That is a fixed interest rate for these loans. The interest changes for new loans once a year. So starting in the fall, there'll be a new interest rate. It has a 1.057% origination fee. What that means is the government takes off 1.057% off the top. So say that you had an $100 loan with a 1% origination fee. You would still have to pay back an $100 loan, but you only ever see $99 of it. However, the amount of aid that you're going to get is going to be that, or that you're eligible for, is going to be that original cost of attendance. So they will slightly raise cost of attendance to include those fees. You will have a 6-month grace period after you drop below half time. So below 5 hours. For most of y'all, that will be when you graduate. A summer off does not count towards this, but for most of you, you'll have 6 months after you drop below half time after you graduate. Because they're federal loans, they're eligible for consolidation and federal loan repayment plans. So that's one option. So to kind of recap what I said, you've got cost of attendance minus scholarship minus federal direct unsubsidized loans. And then you have kind of anything remaining. The first chunk of that will likely come from, well, not the first chunk. One option for you is a Graduate Plus loan. You are still eligible for Graduate Plus loans if you take out a loan this summer. If you don't take out a federal loan this summer, you are no longer eligible for Graduate Plus loans. They are only for kind of legacy borrowers. So you do have to apply for this loan. You apply at studentaid.gov, but the only requirement is that you can't have adverse credit, meaning you can't be bankrupt, you can't be in default on other loans. As long as you meet that requirement, you can get a Graduate Plus loan. So you've got your cost of attendance minus federal direct unsubsidized loans, and then the remainder could be filled with Grad Plus. They always have a 1% higher interest rate than the unsubsidized loans. They do have a higher origination fee, so something to keep in mind. But once again, your cost of attendance will be increased to include origination fees. These also have a 6-month postgraduate deferment, which operates like a grace period after you drop below half time. They're federal loans, so they're eligible for consolidation and federal repayment plans. Once again, the only requirement for this is that you can't have adverse credit. You don't have to have good credit, you just can't have adverse credit. If you are denied, if you have adverse credit, you either fix adverse credit or get a cosigner. So the vast majority of our students currently take Graduate Plus loans to fill kind of the final amount. Another option are state and private alternative loans. So state, we have the Texas Cal, which you can look for at hhloans.com. We also have a list of a preferred lender list for private alternative loans. These have either variable or fixed interest rate, a variety of origination fees, variety of credit requirements. these kind of run the gamut. They're not federal loans though, so obviously they're not eligible for federal loan consolidation or repayment plan. So you want to, if you choose to follow that route, you want to pay attention to the requirements, to what you're signing when you apply for those loans. Another option is VA benefits for those of you who are eligible for VA benefits. You'll want to work with the VA benefits office. I recommend that you do that in plenty of time. So as soon as you register, go ahead and contact the VA benefits office here at Baylor. They will put kind of a placeholder on your account, but something to note. So the VA does not actually send aid until after the term begins every time. I mentioned this at the beginning, but you will see work study as an option, but financial aid will not award that to you, even if you select it on your FAFSA. The only exception to that requires a discussion with the associate dean. So to kind of recap what I said, cost of attendance is the maximum amount of aid that you can get. The first chunk of that will come from scholarship. The next chunk will come from federal direct unsubsidized loans. And then if you need anything else, you can either apply for a graduate plus, a private loan, or a state loan, and then VA benefits kind of operate outside this cost of attendance structure. All right. So after you apply for whatever loans that you have and you see them flow through on BearWeb, there's going to be some follow-up that you need to do. You'll have to do a master promissory note and entrance counseling for each of your federal loans. And you'll have to do a master promissory note for any private or state loan that you take as well. BearWeb will tell you what needs to be done, what is still missing on those federal loans. So pay attention to BearWeb. Um, After you do all that, you'll want to settle your account. So here's kind of the timeline for settling your account. As soon as you can, but really no sooner than 90 days before the term starts, you'll apply for Graduate Plus or private loans, state loans as well. Bills are typically generated on the 5th of the month after you register. Summer's a little bit different in that they will not send those bills until the 5th of May, which is kind of a strange timeline. That is just how they do it to get us in line with the rest of the university. Loans will typically appear as memoed aid in BearWeb about 2 weeks before classes start. And then every quarter, your loans and scholarships will disperse either 10 days or a week before classes start. And then if loans and scholarships create a balance, or there's not a balance after that, it creates a negative balance. If you set up direct deposit, that excess will be refunded to you anywhere from 7 to 5 days before classes start. So same timeline every quarter. Loans appear and scholarships appear as memoed about 2 weeks before classes start, either 10 days or a week before classes start, that aid disperses. And then 5 days before classes start, that excess will appear in your bank account. The balance is typically due at the end of the month after you register. The exception to that being this quarter, where your balance actually won't be due until May 31st. So in future quarters, just note that your aid will not disperse by the time your bill is due. That's okay. As long as it's showing as anticipated aid, as long as it's showing up as memoed, it will count towards your balance. This quarter, that's not going to be an issue though. If you are not settled by that due date, there will be a late fee. The late fee varies depending on how much you owe. But if you're not settled, don't panic. Don't panic. You will not be dropped from class. You can either see me or you can see Jerry Cunningham in our registrar's office. So switching gears a little bit, some other factors to consider. You're going to want to live like a law student now so that you can live like a lawyer later. So definitely want to be really cautious about what you're spending, your budget. You do not necessarily need to go up to that full cost of attendance, but there are some expenses we want you to have in mind so that you can be kind of saving for these expenses. One is books. There is a line item for books in cost of attendance, but sometimes people are taken aback by how expensive books can be. We do recommend that you have hard copy books. A lot of the first year faculty will not allow technology in their classrooms, and students just find that they study better with hard copy books anyway. Those can be expensive. Once you're here, you will learn some tips for getting books from upperclassmen, getting used books, things like that. But you do want to put aside a substantial portion for books, particularly at the beginning. Another thing that people sometimes don't realize is expenses surrounding the bar exam. Um, so you can have this built into cost of attendance. So you can get loans to cover these expenses, but I want you to know that they're coming. So here in Texas, we require you to start the process to become an attorney when you're a first year law student. And there'll be somebody from the Board of Law Examiners that comes to talk to you about this during orientation. But that will be an $190 fee in your first quarter. So you can start the process of the Board of Law Examiners looking into your background, getting fingerprinted, the whole process. If you don't do it in your first quarter, there will be an additional $150 if you choose to do it later. And then in your third year, when you get ready to sit for the bar exam, um, that is a $500 fee to sit for the bar exam and to take it on a laptop. If you do it by the early deadline, if you don't do it by the early deadline, it'll either be an 150 additional $150, or if you do it by kind of the late deadline, it'll be an additional $300. So you definitely want to do it early, but you don't want to be taken aback by those fees. And then finally, when you get ready to sit for the bar exam, most people will do a commercial bar prep class. Barbary is kind of the most common one, and they will be here on campus at orientation. Those can be several $1,000s, and you don't want to be taken aback by that. I encourage you to visit with Barbary. Sometimes you can be a student representative for Barbary and get some additional funds off that course. Something else that you're going to want to keep in mind is laptop. Almost every year, someone's laptop will break down, and you don't want to be stuck without a laptop because although you're not allowed technology in some of the first year classes, you'll be doing a lot of your studying, outlining, briefing on your laptop, and you will take finals on your laptop. So you definitely want to make plans for having a good working laptop. And then finally, you are going to need several suits. Not right at the beginning, and we'll talk to you about this during orientation, but fairly early in your law school experience, you will need a suit, then you will need several suits by the end of your time in law school. There might be some other interview or travel expenses as you're looking towards getting jobs next summer. So just want you to be thinking about these things as you're building out a budget. So some other ways to get money. A big way is summer or off-quarter clerkships. So most of you will take off the next 2 summers, so summer 27 and summer 28. Depending what you're doing, those can make decent money. A lot of times people will kind of squirrel away the money that they make there to help with those extra expenses I talked about, or help them reduce the amount of loans they have to take. We do publish a weekly list of some upcoming writing competitions that we know about. I encourage you to take a look at this list. I encourage you also to go to Access Lex Scholarship Data Bank. Those are a great way to learn about writing competitions and private scholarships. I mentioned upper level scholarships that we have. We also have some small monetary awards at the end of every year called Law Day Awards for people that do really well on an advocacy team or do really well in a particular class. So stay tuned for those. And then I encourage you to check with your local bar association, your local civic organizations. A lot of times they can have small scholarships as well. One thing that is not on here, but I will mention, is that in the summer, so the next couple of summers, if you're doing anything public interest, we do have some public interest stipends to help you kind of live through the summers when you're not getting paid. Okay, so what you're going to need to do, you're going to need to go through these steps every fall through spring and every summer. I said so again in the summer. So yes, you had to do it this summer. You have to do it again in the fall. And if you take classes next summer, you'd have to go through this process next summer. But for most of you, after this fall, you won't go through the process again until next fall. We're going to explain something called Access Lex Max during orientation. I encourage you to look at Access Lex Max sessions. It's basically free personal finance for law students, run by a nonprofit that really focuses on law school financial aid and well-being. And that organization also has something called Access Connects, which is free individualized loan counseling for all law students and alumni. So I encourage you to take advantage of that. Save for future expenses. So those expenses that I mentioned, don't get taken aback by those. As you're planning your budget, make sure you're saving money for those. Adjust your loans based on experience. You do not need to take out the full cost of attendance every quarter if you don't need it. So adjust your loans down. You don't feel like you have to take the same amount every time you go through this process. And then the last thing, I get questions a lot about deferring loans. So for most of you who have undergrad or graduate school loans, your loans will be automatically deferred. We're part of something called the clearinghouse, which means that after the 12th class day, which is the census day, we send a list of everybody who's enrolled to this clearinghouse, and the lenders check that list. As long as they see you're on the list, they defer your loans. If for some reason your lender is not a part of the clearinghouse, you can ask them for an in-school deferment form and bring that to either me or to our registrar's team, and we will get that filled out for you. And then finally, if you have any general clarifying questions, kind of your first stop, please come see me in the admission suite or Director Braceland, and we can kind of help you on that initial step. If you have specific account questions, or we can't answer your questions, you're going to want to go to One Stop, which is on main campus. Their contact information is there. If you ever have a less than positive experience with One Stop with the financial aid office over there, please let us know. Sometimes we can help kind of find things out behind the scenes. And with that, I hope this was helpful in understanding financial aid.